Welcome again, everybody, to another instalment of the Good Bit podcast. Welcome in. This is the final edition of 2022. Unquestionably, the best year that we've ever had in terms of content and consistency of the podcast. It has been such a blast and a buzz this year getting to chat to so many great people, and we have a Christmas edition for you this week. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays, happy festive season, however you are celebrating this year. Thank you for downloading this episode and adding this to your Christmas playlist, whether that's songs, podcasts, or movies, or Christmas specials. This, I suppose, could be the Good Bit Christmas Special 2022. And how could we find a better film to chat about? In my opinion, the greatest Christmas film of all time, or at least my favourite Christmas movie ever. We are chatting about the 1999 classic from Chris Columbus. It is Home Alone this week, with Macaulay Culkin, Daniel Stern, and of course, Joe Pesci. And joining me for this episode is a long-time pal, former castmate, and star of Molly and Mack on Cebeebies. Is it Joshua or Josh Haynes? Josh Haynes? I'll call you Josh.
You can call me whatever you want, Chris.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Right, Josh, it's lovely to see you. It's been ages. It's definitely been a minute since we've seen each other in person, but it's lovely to chat to you here. How have you been? What's been going on?
Good, man, good. Is that your fire alarm? Or my fire alarm going off?
It's not my fire alarm.
I think that's my neighbour's fire alarm going off. Perfect timing. I'm good. I'm good, mate. I haven't seen you in like what, 5 years? 4 or 5 years?
Well, I must have seen you out somewhere or at a party or something, surely. It's not been 5 years since I've seen you.
Maybe we've like slightly crossed paths.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Something like that, yeah.
Since we've had a proper full-bung conversation, it's been about 4 or 5 years, which is, a lot of time. A lot of things have happened in that time.
A lot of crazy things, a lot of things that have slowed us down from having those catch-ups. And but at the same time, it's given us this opportunity. Zoom has become a thing that we're able to chat to each other at any random moment.
yeah, a hell of a lot more accepted thing, for better and for worse.
Absolutely. We were just chatting about self-tapes there before we started recording, and like it almost seems like before the pandemic, it was like, oh, really? That's a bit weird. Like, we're going to film myself in my living room, like, and going to send you this tape. I'd much rather just come for an audition. Whereas now, because that just became the norm for so long, it's like now going for the audition is like the gold mine. Do you know what I mean? Like, when's the last time you were like having an in the room great audition?
Yeah, like the in the room audition definitely feels a hell of a lot rarer.
Yeah, agreed.
The funny thing is I think I'm one of the few actors that before the pandemic preferred having a self tape. Like I prefer the way that things have gone now, because if you're doing a self tape for the film or the TV thing, right, or if you're doing an in-person edition for the film or TV thing, like the difference there is, like, if you're in the in-person edition, you've got a casting director, which is great having someone to play off, and the room's set up for you. You don't need to go through the pain of setting up for the self-tape. But 9 out of 10 times, the lighting's horrible, the angle's horrible, and you might be a little bit uncomfortable. And you know what? See if you fudge it, right? The casting director is taking that as a fudged edition. But on your self-tape, you've got a hell of a lot more control. And one of the best things I think that you can do for the self-tape anyway is flexing that muscle that you can flex, where you go, I understand how camera's supposed to work.
Yeah.
If you get a nice complementary angle, some nice complementary lighting, you've got your eye lines right and all that. And if you just tick all the little boxes, I feel like a self-tape can help put you a hell of a lot further than you can usually go in an audition, just a normal audition.
It's nice to hear that, because usually the kind of standard is like, self-tape is such a pain, blah, blah, blah. But there is so many benefits to it. I sometimes struggle though when like you get maybe like a script for it or sides for your audition, and like most of your stuff is like just reaction based, right? And you need to try and get someone else to read the lines, but sometimes like people aren't available, there's a quick turnaround or whatever.
I don't know if it's I don't know if it's for my benefit. I'm not putting this out there as any genuine advice, but like if I've got something that's really difficult in the script that I've been given, let's say it's a hell of a lot of reaction stuff, just
Yeah.
purely reaction stuff. Um, I'll tend to just improv a little bit. I'll just chuck in like a line or something, just so I can.
Get more of a kind of vibe of the scene.
Yeah, because a lot of the time I think casting directors and all that are great for picking the right person for the job, but not a lot of casting directors are doing self tapes themselves.
Right.
Sometimes they're sending out scripts and they've read the script and they're going, that's a lot of great stuff for an actor to work with, and I'll be able to see a lot of range. But when it comes to actually taping it and you're going, how well is this actually going to look once this is a finished product that I'm sending over? I don't think sometimes that's entirely thought through. But
Yeah.
that's not me saying in any bad way towards casting directors. I mean, it's just blind spots in other people's professions. Sometimes writers get it when you get a script
Yeah.
and you start speaking the line and you're like, there's no way someone in real life would say a sentence like this, you know? And writers can get very defensive about that because I've been on the writing side now a little bit, and
Yeah.
you kind of go, well, mate, I've been sitting here writing this for 2 years, so just shut up and say the line. You've literally just stepped on and you've got all these ideas. No, just say the line. But
Yeah.
sometimes it does take someone performing the line to go, hold on, this doesn't roll off the tongue.
Well, I don't know if you've ever encountered that, but like recently I was doing something and I had a script and I was like, I would never say this. Or I don't, it just doesn't sound right. It's not something that you would normally say. But I didn't feel like I had the authority to go over, maybe it's an experience thing or whatever, but I did not feel like I'm going to say to them, I'm not going to say this, because maybe the director and even just the writer or whatever, they've got the kind of shots in their head and they kind of know what they want. And they might be thinking, the shots may change based on the lines and we're waiting for a certain line or a certain word. So I do find that quite tricky, but it's all about that relationship, right? Like creating that relationship with the director, having that collaborative effort. That's what it needs to be, right?
I think my advice to you, man, is just if you feel like you've got an idea that is maybe a better way to say the line or a better way to do the scene, always suggest it. Always suggest it, because the worst that can happen is the director can say no.
Yeah.
I mean, read the room. See if you've got a nightmare director, right? Just shut up and do the job. It's not worth
get it done.
But in my experience, it's very rare that you're going to get someone on set like that. A lot of the time, every single person on set is there to do the job. They're there because they love the job, and they want to make something good, and that requires collaboration. So I always feel like if you read the line and something feels wrong, trust yourself as an actor. Like, you're there for a reason. You're there because you're able to provide the tools of what is the right performance. So if it feels wrong reading it, speak up.
Yeah. Well, it's all about collaboration and about that relationship. I think it's really important. And that's kind of when you get the best experiences working on a show or in a film, on set. It's like when you have those experiences and those relationships that you can talk about. You know what I mean? I now have this, in my back pocket, I
mean, there's been a couple of really nice moments throughout my time on Molly and Mack. So, I mean, season 1, freshly graduated, first copy job. I was absolutely terrified, right? I mean, I'd done MI High.
Me too. I did MI High as well.
Oh, yeah, so you did. Well, I did MI High when I was 16, and that was 1 year, but it was so long between MI High and Molly and Mack that, it just felt new again.
Yeah.
So season 1, I just did what I was told, and I was afraid to speak up and all that. But over the years, I've, sometimes, as I said, we're doing a scene or I'm saying a line and it doesn't feel right. And I've spoken up and I've talked to the director or I've made suggestions. And it's a really, really good feeling when you get to the stage, when you start doing that. And these other people who have been doing the job for years go, that's a good idea. Or you fix the problem.
And you feel like that satisfaction of, yes, I've suggested something good and you like my idea.
I think actors always have a bit of a complex. That's what I've noticed with a lot of actors that I've worked with that when we're on set, are we that useful? Like, you know, like our job is like the gimmick job. Like, we're just turning up and reading the lines, and everybody else is slaving away, and everybody else is there all day. You know, I feel like, yeah, you can do that to yourself sometimes. I've totally brain farted here. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I know what you mean.
I had a great profound point that I was going to make, and then it just totally ran away from me.
That's all right. Well, I was going to move on to anything that
we. Just cut it like mid-sentence, so it's a really obvious cut.
And Josh just forgot what he was about to say.
Yeah.
So we actually did a show together, very, very vaguely. I did a wee cameo part in a show years ago in 2016, I believe it was called Inherit the Wind. It was at the East Kilbride Arts Centre, directed by Fran Lyons. You're the year above me when we studied at the same place, yes. By the way, for those listening. Josh and I studied at the same place. New College, Lanarkshire. Great time there, great memories.
Amazing establishment.
Amazing establishment. Sponsored by...
yeah, give me the commission.
What are your memories of doing those shows? Do you have fond memories looking back at your college time? And kind of what are some of the highlights of doing those shows?
Well, Inherit the Wind was great. Inherit the Wind was actually I didn't have the largest of parts. I played quite a few parts in that, but
it was a cracking show.
It was a brilliant show. Everybody really brought their A game. I mean, that was my favourite thing about New College, Lanarkshire. Was every single person you ever saw performing there was really bringing 110%.
Yeah,
it was amazing. But yeah, I was playing this character called Mika. I think that was his name. I mean, it's been a while since we've done it.
That's a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
It was.
I just remember he was probably like one of my most favourite characters to play because he was just really warm and just really nice. And usually that particularly at that time, I liked to play quite dark characters and, you know, quite brooding and, you know, like I've got the dark hair, I've got the cheekbones, you know, I gravitate towards these roles. But yeah, this was a completely different one. And I mean, it might be a little bit TMI, but like I think it was a real test for me doing that on a couple of the performances because I had a breakup very close around that time. And so I was feeling really terrible within myself, like really, really low. And I was having to play real warmth and welcomeness and all that and trying to... Because Inherit the Wind is a pretty serious tone.
It's heavy, man, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's very heavy. It's not the happiest of plays.
No.
To say. So I felt like it was kind of my job to inject that a little bit with Mika, which was great. And yeah, and it was a big cast as well. So we had your year supporting us.
Jumping in, yeah, did a wee cameo, yeah.
Who did we have? We had you, we had
Becca Murphy was in there.
Yeah, that was a great show. I think what other ones did we do?
What else did you do?
Well, in first year we did Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies, yes, of course. That was a cracker.
Which was an experience and a half. There's so many memorable points from that show. I loved it, but I don't think my nose will ever be the same again. Did you manage to see Lord of the Flies?
I did, yeah, because I was just about to join N-Clan.
And we had all the dust.
Ah, that's right.
Oh my God, I will never.
That's right.
You know what? We got a lot of complaints about the dust, but in all fairness to Fran, like it really worked for the show. You know, like when you were doing these scenes, like all the pure manic scenes, and all the dust was getting kicked up, and eventually this big massive dust cloud in the middle of a theatre. It was brilliant. You know, everyone's choking and dying.
Everybody's sneezing in the crowd.
Yeah, a health and safety nightmare, but you know, it was entertaining.
It was. What was the other one? Did you do? Was it Medea? You did, because that was serious, wasn't it?
That was so serious. And if Gregor hears this, like I don't know how happy he'll be with me giving away this information if it ever gets relayed to Liz Lockhead, because he was terrified of her ever finding this out. But we slightly adapted Medea.
Uh-huh.
We got rid of the chorus and we split the lines up and gave them to the characters. And yeah, I've got this big 5-minute monologue. And like, I remember when we were rehearsing, Greg said to me, he was like, "It feels like you're trying to force yourself to cry. You know, you're trying to get to that. Don't force it if it's not going to happen." And when it got to the actual performance, it was the first time in my acting experience where I completely connected with the script for the first time. Like, I wasn't on stage anymore. I was just properly visualizing what I was saying and churning it over in my head. And every single night I cried, and at not any point was it forced. You know, if anything, I was trying not to cry. Like, it was.
Yeah, sometimes that's more powerful, right? Seeing someone trying to hold it back, you know?
Yeah. And that's another trick that I learned, is like, that's a good one. If you've ever got a crying scene, then, you know, hold it back. Don't try and push it out, you know? Like, it's whenever you're crying, you don't want someone to see that you're crying, do you?
No.
Because you feel weak and all that. But yeah, that was a brilliant show. Everybody brought their A game in that. Rebecca Clark, Ryan, Jay, Bethany. Like, I feel like we all should have been really, really proud of that one.
That was a good one. Yeah, I remember thinking, I was really moved by that one. So very well done there. How did it all get started for you? Like, when did you first decide this is going to be my life? I'm going to be a performer. I always say that. I always say performer rather than actor, because it's so much, it's so big in it. Like, sometimes you don't just act. Sometimes you have to be a personality and stuff. When did you want to perform?
For me, mate, it was honestly as far back as I can remember.
Yeah.
I remember being one of my earliest memories standing in front of the TV, and I think as a kid I kind of knew that it was fake. You know, I did believe there was like 50-50. There was a part of me that did believe in what's happening, but I also did know that it gets filmed and, you know, like, there's a process to it. And I was like, I want to do that, you know, like my number one goal throughout my whole life was, I just want to get on TV.
Yeah.
And I managed to do that at 16 on MI High, which was mental because it gave me a huge identity crisis, because I don't think a lot of people get to 16 and they achieve like the one big goal.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So I was like, where do I go from here? But yeah, I wanted to do acting loads as a kid. And then when I got to 12, 13, I became really self-conscious.
Right.
And I didn't want to be an actor because, you know, a lot of, in my school particularly, none of the cool kids did it. So, you know,
it used to drive me nuts.
I wasn't bold enough as those kids back then to put myself in the firing line for what I loved. You know, like, back
That's
then.
a great line, by the way. Write that one down.
Well, it's true. You know, back then I probably would have ridiculed them, but it was literally because they were doing something that I had an insecurity.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to do, but I was too insecure to do when they had the courage to do it. So props to them. You know, they're the ones that won in that situation. So I quit acting when I was 12 and 13, and I started doing music.
Nice.
I just picked up loads of different instruments over the years. I picked up guitar, picked up, you know, bass, ukulele, mandolin, like all those kind of interchangeable ones, like learned a little bit of keyboard.
Yeah.
And then when I was 16, my music teacher came up to me one day and she was like, "Oh, Josh, the BBC are coming to the school to do some auditions for the kids show. And I think you'd be great for it." And I was like, "Oh, what is it?" And she was like, you just need to be able to sing, play guitar and act, you know? And I was an absolute chancer at the time, right? So I hated school. So I found out that the audition was on during a double period of biology.
Right? Result.
And I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm gonna go to this, not to get it, right? I wasn't interested in doing that acting anymore at that time. I was fully committed to the music. It was actually going quite well. And I was like, I'll just go along to this guy at a class, it'll be a wee bit of fun. Did the audition, the casting director was like, "That's really good. Can you come into town for another audition?" And I was like, "Sure, when?" And she was like, "In an hour." And I was like,
Really?
"Aye, right." So, and this was during school time, so I was like, "Yes, out of the extra school
Yes, I
time."
will come in for an hour. Or
Yes,
in an hour.
but my teacher was like, "Right, to get Josh out of school, we obviously need his parents' permission." So they called up my mum, and my mum's like, "Hello," and they're like, "Hi, Tina, it's Shawlands Academy. We're calling about Josh," and she's like, "Oh, all right, okay." And they're like, "Yeah, his BBC editions went really well, and he's got a call back. They'd like to see him again in town in an hour." And she was like, "What BBC edition?" Because I was just arriving out of school, so I didn't
Right.
tell anything about it. So went into town, did this audition in an hour, and then I got called up the next day, and I'd got the part the day after,
Wow.
and that kind of kick-started the acting career again. So
Yeah, the passion was there again.
yeah, and I'm so glad that happened. And I almost shat out of it. I almost backed out of it. I almost went and did psychology, and it was like the last week of being able to apply to New College Lanarkshire because I've been told to go there. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the dive. I'm going to take the leap of faith, and it's the best thing I've ever done. It's the best thing I've ever done.
Absolutely. I was the exact same. I was almost about to do modern studies instead of drama at school.
Yeah, you're like a man after my own heart.
And I was just like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I have to go and make people laugh and try and perform in front of people. That was the thing I wanted to do, like in my spare time, and then it turned into like a career dream, if you will.
Well, that's it. And it was, for me, it was nothing against psychology and all that stuff, right? I'm massively interested in all that stuff and science and blah, blah, blah. But there's just no better thrill than when you're involved in a creative project. See, for so long, I thought it was the acting. So in the last couple of years, I've tried doing a little bit more behind the camera, so a little bit more writing, a little bit more directing and all that. And like I've just learned that, like, for me anyway, it's just being involved in something bigger, something that you're working with everyone together on.
You're all kind of, absolutely.
Yeah, and you just get beautiful moments, and like I feel so fortunate to be involved in this world. A lot of people might do it for fame, a lot of people might do it for money. I'm one of those like literal walking cliches. I literally do it because it gives me so much joy.
Right. And that's the most important thing. You mentioned playing different instruments. You do a bit of singing. What is like a typical Josh karaoke tune? What do you like to play on the guitar? What's the go-to?
What's a typical karaoke tune? Well, I would prefer, if I was doing karaoke, to do a duet.
Me too.
Right, so here we go. So my song of choice would probably be Danger High Voltage, Electric Six.
Nice, good one. It's a popular one among people our age, I believe.
Yes, and I think that's my neighbour's fire alarm going off again. I think he might be having a little puff.
I thought you were going to say, I think maybe he's falling asleep when he slips something on.
It's quite a regular thing. I think he just needs to crack a window, but maybe he just loves the hot box.
Maybe.
Danger High Voltage. I think that would be my karaoke song of choice because I would play the woman part. Obviously, the higher octave. I feel like that's just matches my energy.
Yeah.
I think that's a great song for the night out, Danger High Voltage, because if you do that, it's just obviously every karaoke song is fun, but that is fun karaoke song. You know what I mean?
Totally. No, that's a good shout. You mentioned Molly and Mack a minute ago, so there's something that you went straight into after Incline. Did you go straight there? Was that like one of your first auditions or first jobs after Incline?
It took about a year. So I managed to get a couple of small jobs before that. One of them was a web series for BBC Three called The Break.
Okay.
Where I've got a very small part in the episode Franny Wong. It's worth a watch. It's really good stuff. Each one is like a separate story and all that by different directors, different writers. Sean Corcoran is in episode 3 or 4 as well.
Cool, yeah.
For anyone listening that doesn't know, Sean was also in my class at New College, Lanarkshire, another lad who's done pretty well for himself.
Good success, absolutely, yeah.
And then what else did I do? I did an Iron Brew advert.
Classic.
Where I played a zombie Ned. And it's just me and a couple of other zombies plastered over this Iron Brew fridge trying to get into it.
Nice.
There's a great wee story from that where I had to wear zombie contact lenses, and I'd never worn contact lenses at that point.
Oh, it's tough, right?
Right. And also these aren't like prescription contact lenses that you get that are properly made for your eye and, like nice and soft and hydrated and shit, right? So, and they actually had an optician in on the day to put them on, and she puts these contact lenses in my eye, and I'm instantly like, my eyes like seize up. I'm like, and everything starts like going black. I'm basically blind. I'm like, I don't think this is working. My eyes are streaming with water. And everyone's panicking and they're like, oh my God, okay, what do we do? Okay, like just go outside, get a bit of air on them, hydrate them a little bit. So I'm like, okay. Now, bearing in mind, I'm in the middle of a newsagent's, in the middle of Pollock Shields at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, okay?
Right.
Head to toe in full zombie gear. Like, I've spent 4 hours in the makeup chair, right? This is real Walking Dead material. So I'm standing outside in the street, right, going like this, and this old woman comes around the corner. And you know how sometimes when you just walk past somebody and you don't fully register them, you just kind of, all right, good morning, good afternoon,
yeah.
And you just keep going about your day. She walks past me and she goes, afternoon. 2 seconds later, she comes darting back and she's like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, pure heart attack material. Like, she's like, do you need help? Do you need an ambulance? What's wrong with you? Right? I'm like, it's okay. It's just makeup. Like, everyone's coming out the shop going like, it's okay, we're filming an advert. She's like, what's wrong with him? Like, it couldn't have gone any worse.
That's great.
Yeah, so I did that. I think I did something else. I did a couple other small things, and then Molly and Mack, I had an audition for that. I had a self-tape in like late February or early March. And when I got the self-tape, I didn't realise that it was for kids' TV. They didn't brief us on that. And
tell the listeners, for those who don't know, what is Molly and Mack? It's a very popular kids show on, what channel is it? Cebeebies?
Cebeebies.
Yeah.
So Molly and Mack is it's like the main Scottish CBeebies show at the moment. It's like kind of, I would say, almost a modern day Balamory.
You hear that, everybody? There we go. We've got Josh Hayes on the show, the modern day Balamory. Talking words.
Not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but yes, it's like the mainstay Scottish kids TV show at the moment, and essentially what the show is about is I play a character called Mac who runs his own vintage toy and record stall in this big market hub called the Big Hub. And while I'm running this stall, the show takes place during kind of like school holidays, like kind of the summer holidays. It's never specified, but it's during some holiday time. And essentially my little sister pops, like she's the main character. And while she's in the Big Hub, she goes off on all these adventures and has all these interactions with all the other characters in the Big Hub. And that's where all the stories come from. And one of the main dynamics of the show is that in every single episode we have 2 songs. one of them is the idea song and one of them is the Oops, Oh No song. And for anybody that has heard these songs, I apologize, because they are the catchiest things in the world. They are brilliantly wrote. I mean, every single bit of music in the show is phenomenally wrote. The composers behind it are just so talented. And I'm pretty sure they got quite a lot of good work off the back of Molly and Mack. But yeah,
Cool.
the Oops, Oh No song and the idea song feature in every single episode, where a character comes up with some kind of idea to a solution, to a problem, or they create the problem, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the good thing about the show is it's filmed the whole way that we've done the show. Is it's not supposed to be a kids show, it's supposed to be a family show.
Got you.
It's supposed to have a little bit of like a Disney effect, you know what I mean?
Everybody can watch it, yeah.
So everyone can watch it. There's a lot of different elements to it, and anybody who I know who's older that's watched the show that isn't a kid always says to me in the same way. They're like, "Oh my god, this is actually like quite good. Like I actually enjoyed watching it." And I'm like, "Yeah."
You're taking the offence that they're actually surprised by that. Like, this is actually quite good, Josh. Like, what?
Well, always, because it's a funny thing because when they say that, as you said, like when they say stuff like that to me, they say it in a way where it's almost like they're scared of offending me, and I'm like, don't worry, you're not the target audience.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're not the demo. Yeah, absolutely.
If you thought you were the demographic, I'd be worried. Like, but yeah,
that's great. How did it come about you getting that part then? How did Mac become you?
Well, so I had a self-tape in early March, late February. And as I said, I didn't realise that was a kid's show at the time. So the show's called Molly and Mack. And funny enough, my friend who I was doing the audition tape with was called Molly.
Oh, really?
Like, it was only halfway through when we were filming the tape, but I was like, "Yeah, Molly," I was like, "Are you supposed to be a kid?" And she was like, "I think I am." So I was like, "All right, I think I might be doing a kids show." Anyway, sent off the tape, didn't hear anything for a couple of weeks, and then they were like, "Oh, we've got a callback in Edinburgh, and this callback's going to be with one of the girls that we're hoping is going to be part of the show." What I didn't know at that time was Mimi, who plays Molly, was already cast.
Got you.
Pretty sure. So this was a chemistry casting for her, essentially.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious, man. Right. So that year, I can't remember what specific year it was. I think it was 2017, 2018. But that March, it had been freezing. So by the time when I had my call, I had dressed up for it being an absolutely blistering cold day. Right. I had my long johns on, I had my boots, I had my big furry jacket, I had my jumper, like thermaled out my nut, right? And while I'm on the train to Edinburgh, about halfway through, this big, huge sunbeam like breaks window, and it's like literally the start of spring, and like I start cooking in this train, and I'm already nervous, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of sweating from nerves. I'm like absolutely running with sweat now, right? Like honestly, I'm roasting hot, nervous as hell. The train gets delayed as well.
Classic,
right? It delays me into rush hour time in Edinburgh, right? And for some reason, when I get off the train, because I'm so panicked about being late, I jump in a taxi.
Right. At rush hour?
At rush hour, right? I'm not thinking things through, because I'm like, if I don't jump in a taxi, I'll run there. And if I run there, I'm going to be literally dripping.
Absolutely sweating, yeah.
Literally dripping with sweat, right? So I get in this taxi and I'm like, maybe I can cool down there. No, it's like a glass house, right? It's like a big greenhouse, like. Anyway, even later, get to the audition. I'm like, I like to get to an audition about 15 minutes early.
I'm always early, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that you can just settle. You know what I mean? Like, not even worry about what you're saying. Just settle, relax, just get in the zone.
Get in the atmosphere, absolutely.
Yeah, And then I step into this building, and the building's got a glass roof, mate. and the sun is like spread out across the whole building, and I'm like, this is dreadful. Like,
Absolutely roasted.
I'm sweating so much. And anyway, the casting director comes down. She's absolutely lovely. It's all O'Connor. She casted me for MI High as well. She's like, it's okay, don't worry, come up, right? Mimi's waiting upstairs, and as I'm walking up to her room, I'm kind of briefing myself, and I'm going, what's the most important thing that I can do for this audition? And I'm like, the most important thing that I can do in this audition is not act well, right? That doesn't matter here. It's about getting on with this kid.
Yeah.
How well can I get on with this kid? So they open the door, and it's this little 7-year-old, right? Mimi Robertson. And I'm this big, standing there like and I'm like, hi, right? And she's like, hi. And I'm like, how are you? And she's like, good, you? And I'm like, good. And,
Roasted.
right? And I had a mustache at the time, which I think just must have made me look even more nuts. Anyway, and I do this audition with her, and it's good. You know, I don't know if I've killed it or not. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I've absolutely like knocked it out. Yeah. And she leaves the room, and I'm talking to the director and the producer and all that. And like, anyway, go back home. And then I get another call back a couple of weeks later, which is just a one-on-one with me and the director. And that was pretty simple. Felt like it went well. And then, yeah, a couple of weeks later again, I ended up getting the part.
Brilliant, man. It was just so nice seeing like all your success over like on socials you're always posting about and stuff like that. It's like, there's Josh in that show doing so well. It's always nice to see. I'm assuming it was a good run. I know you did like over 100 episodes or something.
101.
Jeez.
101, which
is... a kid's show, that's really good, right?
Yeah, most kids shows, I'm pretty sure, only last about 2 or 3 seasons.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there was plans to kind of do a 6th season, but it was only if we could film it back to back, and we did that with season 3 and 4, and it was great because, you know, you were doing work and we worked through the pandemic and that as well, so it was like a lifeboat in that kind of sense, but it was very taxing doing 6 months non-stop of filming, you know, so a lot of us went, we can't do season 6 if that's the only way that we're going to get it. But as well, for it lasting a really long time for the Cebeebies show, the last season was the strongest. You know, like we ended on a really, really good note. Like there was a lot of stuff. I like watching all the episodes back just to see what I'm given as an actor.
Learn, absolutely, should always do that.
Yeah. And yeah, not just myself. I was really proud of myself this year, but just everyone in the cast. There was these lovely little intimate moments that you would see in the performances, particularly the kids that you'd have never seen before. Really, really nuanced stuff for their age. I was so proud of all of that. It's so weird. Like I definitely behind the scenes became like a kind of real big brother to a lot of kids. Like, you know,
that's cracking.
I think I did that kind of happened because when I did MI High at 16 with no background in acting and no training really at that point, nobody told me how to behave or what to do.
And act on set, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of felt like a fish out of water, and it was really scary and it was really stressful. And I just remember the one thing that I wanted the most when I did that at 16, right, was that I wish someone was there to kind of mentor me a little bit or just make sure that I was okay, because being on a TV set is one of the busiest things you can imagine. Like the clock doesn't stop. It's just bang, 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 bang. You're constantly moving forward. Every minute is money, is loads and loads of money. So I kind of took it upon myself for Molly and Mack, because we had a lot of kids, to kind of be that person for them, because none of these kids had an acting background. You know, they were all very fresh to it as well.
That's what they would have needed. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, as you say, like finishing on such a high note, like it always means that you could always bring it back at some point and go back to it. I don't know how that's going to work, but if it's on such a high level and the ratings are good, there's no reason why they can't revive it in the future, you know?
I hope so. I mean, I think the one thing that might make that quite hard is that we all took the set home. It was almost like like whenever Scotland beat England in a football game, it's like literally like
Let's
on
take
the
the goalposts.
pretty much. Honestly, I've got so much memorabilia, just useless memorabilia, sitting around my gaff right now. I've got some
Yeah.
pretty cool ones as well. I mean, I managed to get my hands on a couple of the clapper boards,
Cool.
which was awesome, and they've got like the logo
Mm.
laser printed into the actual clapperboard themselves. So, like, yeah, it's some
And
good.
also, and also, the kid actors are now grown up, so maybe you can go back to them. I don't know.
Well, the kids joked on the last season. Mimi and Ethan, who plays the main lad, the oldest lad, kid in the show, made this joke where they were like, "Oh, we should have a reunion episode,
Yeah.
in 5 years when we're all 18." And I was like, that would be wow. I was like, that would be nuts. And I was like, that would be great though. And then they went, how old would you be, Josh? And I was like, I'd be 31. No, like, we're not doing that show.
Look at Mac, he's gotten so old.
As we said, Mac's gone to college anyway, college air quotations.
That's right, he's away to college, that's right. Who knows what's happened to him. All right, man, well, you mentioned that you never really got really into movies, watching lots of films until the pandemic, which is really interesting. And like a lot of people were the same. They were catching up on stuff, especially with this huge, massive reach in streaming services nowadays. What can you remember, like the first time you went to the cinema? Can you remember like early cinema memories or like early times that you were watching movies when you were a kid, when you were Mimi's age? Or Molly's age?
Like 8, maybe.
Yeah, like whatever, like when you were really young.
I mean, I remember seeing, I think my first memory of the cinema was, I might have been about 3, and I remember seeing Mulan.
Oh, nice, good one.
Yeah, that was a good one. Another very early memory I've got of films. Maybe this is why I didn't get into films much, was going to see Jurassic Park 3. And I don't think I was even able to get 10 minutes into the film before I had to say to my dad, I was like, I want to go home. I remember at the time my dad was pure raging because obviously he's paid for 2 cinema tickets and he's leaving within 10 minutes.
I think I've seen Jurassic Park 3. That's the thing. I think a lot of people told me to avoid it.
I don't think I have either, so I can't really give my opinion on it. I think one of the biggest, earliest movie memories I've got is Harry Potter.
A lot, again, our age, like we kind of grew up with that, right?
Yeah, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and not the film in the cinema. I don't really remember seeing it in the cinema, but we got it on VHS. Mm-hmm. For any younger folk that are listening, that's an ancient relic of the past.
Yes, as a videotape.
Yes. Yeah. You might find them in charity shops, or like in skips or museums, maybe.
Or your grand's house. Aye.
Yeah. I used to, I'm sure as we all did, just watch films on repeat again and again and again and again. And Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was probably the main one that is like imprinted in my knowledge. Any time that it comes up on ITV now, because it's on fucking ITV every day pretty much.
It's on all the time, yeah.
And they'll be coming on definitely with the Christmas season coming up.
Totally.
But literally, like, it can be 5 years since I've seen The Philosopher's Stone. It's like I watched it again recently this year, I think, and I hadn't watched it in years. And yeah, it was like every second line I just knew because I'd watched it so much. And the best thing about The Philosopher's Stone was after not seeing it for years and watching it kind of again, feeling like I'm an adult now, it's still just as magical. It's still just as magical. Christopher Columbus, I mean, as we might probably discuss very soon with Home Alone, he's got a real talent at capturing that childlike magic, like of making small moments a lot more fairy tale like and just very special. And there's something very homely about Chris Columbus's films in that sense. you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both Harry Potter and Home Alone do that in a very good sense. And also, the most interesting thing about Harry Potter and Home Alone is like those are films not without their scary moments for children.
Yeah,
You know, the two of them, like the idea of the burglars at the start of Home Alone and the funness when you're a kid is
absolutely.
you're like, whoa, what the hell is that? And then also when you see Voldemort, like that's
Mm.
terrifying as a kid and the Forbidden Forest and all that. But these films are still so homely and so magical, you know. And
It's
you,
like goes back to what you were saying about kid shows, though. It's made for everybody, so everybody can enjoy it and everybody can watch it.
yeah,
That's why I like the Philosopher's Stone so much, is because it's the most magical one. It focuses on the magic the most, you know. And actually, last Halloween 2021, I saw it at the cinema, which was class. They re-showed it.
was that, was that it, like one of the main ones, or was that at like GFT?
No, it was Cineworld. Yeah, they were showing it. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I mean, I reckon they probably do it every year now. So,
yeah.
if you get a chance to see the big screen with the music, oh man, we definitely recommend anybody doing that. But you've already mentioned it. You've mentioned Home Alone. Not only is that, in my opinion, the best Christmas movie, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in my top 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I was buzzing that you picked this one because
Better than Hereditary.
the original pick was Hereditary, and I'd not seen it, and I don't like scary movies. I was like, right, okay, it's Josh's pick. But then
I kind of picked that up. And you've not seen Hereditary.
I've never seen it now.
Like, you really would not have liked that watch then.
That's why we're doing the podcast. Do you know what I mean? I like to try and get new recommendations to watch and tick them off my list, you know. So I would have watched it, but the fact you picked one of my favorite films, I was like, I don't need to watch it before doing the podcast.
Yes.
So, why Home Alone? When was the first time you watched it? What does Home Alone mean to you?
Well, I can't remember the first time. I can't remember the first time I watched
No.
Home Alone is like literally one of those. I think it's all Christmas films that I just remember knowing, and maybe like Disney films like Snow White and Beauty and the Beast and all that. You know what I mean? Like, there's a few films in there where you're like, I just always knew them, and Home Alone to me was one of them.
They have that rewatchable factor, yeah.
And it's just brilliant. I'm a huge lover of slapstick comedy. I think it's particularly in today's world, a really underutilized form of comedy.
100%.
It's completely innocent, you know, like, unless you're adding extra things, like, you know, like sometimes in the past there's been blackface added to these kinds of performances and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's an addition that makes this comedy painful. Like, slapstick in its purest form can't actually hurt anybody,
Yeah.
which is ironic considering how physical it is. But yeah, it had wonderful slapstick humor. What's his name? Who's the main guy again?
Macaulay Culkin.
Macaulay Culkin. He's absolutely phenomenal. It is the Macaulay Culkin film. You know,
Yeah.
I know he was like a 90s child and all that, but when you think of Macaulay Culkin, you think of Home Alone, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I totally agree with you, by the way, saying it's the best Christmas film.
As we come into this kind of festive period, you know what I mean? It's like everyone's wanting to watch the films and the films start coming on TV. But for me, Home Alone has always been a Christmas Eve tradition, you know, because it's the most Christmassy one and because it's such a great film. I would always watch that, and maybe Elf or The Polar Express, and the films that I'll look at that are the most Christmassy on Christmas Eve. So I would never want to watch Home Alone and that sort of thing like really early on in December, you know?
Yeah. Like, you've got that as a special date.
Absolutely, and I think that's why I've watched it so much in my life. You know, because you'd watch it around Christmas Eve and around Christmas Day, and it would always be on around that time. And same with the second one, Lost in New York. I know, you know, the sequels aren't great. The 3 and 4 are definitely nowhere near as good, and it's just because it's different directors, different actors, and that's fine. It's never going to be the same. But Home Alone 1 and 2, Home Alone 1 is a better film. But sometimes you can argue that Home Alone 2 is just as, if not more, Christmassy than the first one. You know?
And also, I think it's Home Alone 1 is the better one.
Yeah.
It's definitely more focused, and definitely whenever I've watched them now as an adult, like, you know, again, it's interesting how these films that you watch as a kid, how they evolve, how your view of them evolves as you get older. Home Alone 2, I feel, is less believable.
Right.
Like, you're like, maybe in Home Alone 1, a family could have forgotten their kid.
Yeah.
if the house was that mental, and that's what the first 20, 30 minutes is of Home Alone, is it's pure chaos.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, maybe this could happen, but you're like, second time round, it's just a little less believable, and it is almost like the cash grab film a little bit.
That's it. I mean, it did so well, the first one. Do you know what I mean? Like, we need to do another one before, Macaulay Culkin gets older. We've still got, Joe Pesci willing to do this again.
Exactly.
So let's do it. And I obviously, I totally understand that when it comes to money and business and stuff, you have to do it. But I guess that's why the first one has that more charm,
Yeah. And I think as well, but the one that makes the second one so good is it's almost like it's just the Aliens effect. It's just what do you do for the sequel? You just make it a little bit bigger, a little bit.
Keep adding to it. Yeah.
There's a little bit more carnage that happens in the house. I mean, every single time I watch Home Alone, I don't know if you feel this yourself, being a big fan, but I always find it mental being a big fan. Every single time I watch it, I'm always surprised, every single time, about how long it takes for the slapstick stuff to start.
Yeah.
Like, you're watching the film and you're going, this is a lot of build-up.
Yeah.
This is a lot of build-up. And then you're checking the time and you're going, there's half an hour left. and they're not in the house yet, And
yeah, you're right.
Particularly as a kid, my memory is most of the film.
Is that? Yeah, absolutely.
So...
Well, I used to... I don't know if I was just lucky and I had like the DVD when I was being instead of the video, right? But maybe it was just the video. But
I had the DVDs of Home Alone.
I can accurately remember the DVDs, right? And always asking my mum or my dad to put the DVD in for me and go to the scene selection and select, scene 16 or whatever it was.
So you always just came in at the good bit.
Well, this is the good bit podcast. No, but you hit me with that one. That was softball. But don't get me wrong. Like, especially as I got older, I appreciated the whole film. You know what I mean? Like, I think the whole film is great. I love the story arc of Old Man Marley. The kind of old guy. I found
out a very interesting fact about his story arc recently. So the musical sting that they use whenever you see him, right? The music that the choir is singing in his redemption scene, like his wee pep talk before shit goes down.
In the church, yeah.
Yeah. It's the same notes. It's a song that uses the same melody, but in the choir one, it's a different song. It's got the same notes, but it moves into something lighter. And it was Christopher Columbus playing. He's playing with musical intentions of going, what is it? I don't know what it is, but essentially he's recognizing that he's misled you.
Okay.
Through musical work, which I thought was very interesting, and it's not obvious when you're listening to it. Like,
I didn't know that.
Different stuff, but like if you get the sheet music, it's the same notes apparently.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Obviously, I mean, like the most well-known scene, I guess, is when they break into the house and stuff, and then it all goes down, which is just so iconic. And some of the lines, like "Why the hell you dressed like a chicken" and all that stuff, it's so good. But I think my favorite scene is him in the church with Old Man Marley, and they have that moment where he's scared of him, and then he goes and speaks to him, and he's like, "When you see me, you can say hello. You don't need to be afraid." And it's like this nice music and stuff, and then he tries to talk him into connecting with his son, which pays off later in one of the best endings. And then that moment where Kevin's going to leave and he looks up at the clock of the church and that music kicks in, that dum 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 dum. It just hits me right in the feels every single time, because I know it's Christmas, I know it's Christmas Eve. Great music, and it's like, let's do it, because that like battle plan, like when he goes to when I would select those scenes, the ones I wanted to watch, on the DVD, it would start off like the wee picture you'd get on the screen was that battle plan map thing that you had, So seeing that is so nostalgic as well. And I mean, just the horrendous time it gives Harry and Marv. What do you make of their performances and the Harry and Marv characters?
Absolutely amazing. I mean, like, such both Joe Pesci. I can't remember the name of the other actor. Like, that one always escapes me, but he's absolutely. The two of them are just absolutely phenomenal. I hate
the fact. Oh, Daniel Stern. Daniel Stern.
Daniel Stern. The two of them are just so well suited to each other. I don't know if you watched any of the Netflix stuff of the movies that made us.
No, I haven't, because it's like, does each episode specialize in one film?
Aye.
Right. Okay.
And
No, I've not seen them.
they do a Home Alone one, and it's really interesting. Like, there was a bit of issue with the casting there, and I think he was supposed to do it and then knocked it back, and they got another guy in, and that wasn't working, and then they came back to
Daniel Stern?
yeah.
Wow.
And so there's a bit of backstory to that, and I'm so glad it worked out the way that it did.
Can you imagine that not being Marv? You know what I mean? That's just crazy to me.
And a great thing about behind the movies that made this thing that they go into is Joe Pesci, the whole thing that his character does. You know, whenever he gets like hurt and he goes,
Yeah.
that was just him. And I'm pretty sure they were like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, I'm just doing that. Nobody's telling me this. I am doing this for this film." And everyone was like, "Okay," but it worked. You know,
It does totally work.
Apparently, they found it quite strange, like throughout filming. And then also, my heart goes out to the stuntmen on the film. Jesus, I mean, like some of the falls that you see in that, I'm pretty sure Home Alone changed the stuntman game.
Absolutely. The amount of money they can charge as well, by the way, for getting a job.
Oh yeah, what's that?
I'm just like, the amount of money that they can charge now because of Home Alone. Like, stuntmen can say, I want this amount because I'm going to put myself in that amount of danger.
Exactly, you know what I mean? Like, it must be big bucks for any Home Alone-esque gig. It must have its own category, you know what I mean? This is a Home Alone style stuntman gig. What's your favourite trap that Kevin sets?
The one that makes me laugh all the time is, sometimes I get mixed up between the first one and the second one, but see when Marv is outside the house and it's all icy and he's slipping on it and it's going down the stairs.
Aye.
That's such a good one. But then Harry going up and down the stairs is really good too. Anything with stairs is just brutal. But also, like, when Marv comes in the window and he stands on the ornaments in his bare feet.
Oh, yeah.
That's brutal.
Like, oh, that one's brutal. I think my favourite one involving stairs. It's got to be the paint cans.
Paint cans is it's so good. I love it in the second one when they think they've figured it out, and Marv's like, "Hang on, Harry, I'll get him."
Yeah, the callback to the paint cans is the best. That's what makes number 2 for me a real contender. You know, like,
it's belly laughing. You know what I mean? Wow, what a hole! Like, it's so good. So many great lines. But why the hell you dress like a chicken is iconic though. That's a good one.
Why the hell are you dressed like a chicken?
Why the hell did you take your shoes off? And the fact, like, he just walks into this big bit of sellotape and it's just feathers. Like, it would not hurt, but it's just annoying. Like, I just think that was good. But then we need to talk about the bit with the spider, where he grabs the spider off the stair and puts it on Marv's face. But the shot of the spider coming down onto his face is so well done.
I think just on the performance aspect of it as well is like one of my favourite things to do in acting is like the little second or two of digestion.
Hi.
Like, and it's the way the spider comes onto his face and he kind of goes like that for a second, like just looks at it and then
realizes,
completely loses the rag. It's brilliant. And then
the scream gets me every time, and I just love how it's like this really intense build-up music, like it was Jaws or something, you know what I mean? And he puts the spider on his face and then the music fades and it's just this scream. Like, it's so well done.
Like that. Marv
Marv, what are you doing? Marv?
It's a phenomenal film. And also, I mean, the fact John Williams behind it on the music. I mean, I feel like any film, if you want it to be a blockbuster, you get John Williams in to do the job, you know?
I know. Just how many great soundtracks has he done? It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
It's unreal. I had the great fortune of, I don't usually do this, it was the first time I've ever done this year, but I got tickets to go and see a live performance, classical performance by the Royal National Orchestra.
Wow.
Royal National Scottish Orchestra do all the music from Star Wars.
Oh, jeez. That would have been a dream.
So good, man. You know, like I've never sat down and watched a film before and been like, I love the music here. You know, like
Yeah.
there's great tunes in Star Wars. There's phenomenal tunes that you know inside and out. Everybody knows, like, what is it, the Empire March or whatever. But being able to sit there live, hearing all the instruments in a room that's built for that sound, and getting to hear them all played out fully, you know, not just little clips of them, not covered by lines of dialogue or pew, pew, pew kind of stuff. Like, you know, it was such a privilege, and I definitely need to go back and do it again. Like, apparently they do a lot of nights. Like, one of the ones that they were going to do, and I couldn't get tickets for it. I was raging. They were going to do all of John Williams' hits.
Oh, man.
So it would have been Home Alone, Star Wars,
Jurassic Park,
like
Harry Potter.
And then they had another one where they were going to do Williams versus Zimmer, like, which, like, would have been amazing, because, like, literally any film that's got a recognizable soundtrack that isn't John Williams is more than likely Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
Sometimes Danny Elfman.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I know we've not seen each other in like 5 or 6 years, but if you're looking to get me something for Christmas, get me one of them. Get me tickets to see.
Most definitely, man. Most definitely.
What do you make of the ending of Home Alone then, when he reunites with his mother after she comes home? She spends the whole time traveling back with John Candy. Like, such a great cameo, you know?
Brilliant. It's a rather out of place cameo. It does feel a little shoehorned. It works. You kind of do go, like, you're like, all right, okay. Like,
there's John Candy, yeah.
There's John Candy. And, like, yeah, his stuff. As a kid, I didn't really like John Candy's stuff that much at all. I didn't get it, you know, like, but whenever I've watched Home Alone being a little bit older, it's brilliant, you know. It's just so
sweet. Yeah, but
it's so bizarre, it's so funny, it's so unorthodox, like, in everything that's happening. Like, you know, what is it? Kevin's mum's just sitting in the back of a truck with this whole polka band, like
playing the polka music.
Yeah,
polka.
It's so surreal. Yeah, I think the ending of the film is an interesting one. It's the part of the film where, if I was proper analysing a film, I would maybe give it the most critique, you know. But it gets away with it because it's a Christmas film, doesn't it? And it ticks the Christmas film box.
It needs that ending, yeah. And
that's what it needs, which is everything's happy, don't worry about it, you know, sunshine and roses. When, again, as you're saying, as I was saying, how a film evolves every time you watch it growing up. As a kid, that ending worked perfectly well for me. Now when I watch it, I'm a little bit like, I think that kid needs to be put in social services or needs some therapy or something.
Do you imagine that happened to you? Like, oh my God.
And you kind of look at the parents and you're kind of going, yeah, this is the film just writing it off. But if you're playing it for realism, you're like, oh my God, these parents are just trying to avoid a big, massive lawsuit. They just get home at Christmas and they're like, it's all fine. It's all fine.
Hey, Kevin. All right.
We all love you. Like, don't talk to the police. Don't tell them about anything. Like, you know.
I know. I just love the moment when she comes home, and it always makes me emotional. And then he looks out the window and he sees old man Marley with his son.
Yeah.
With his granddaughter. Like, it's just so good. It's such a great ending and very Christmas and family orientated.
And the music just and like, you know, and like your heart is melting. It's the hug, isn't it? Again, you should watch the movies that made this thing, because there's a really interesting bit about that scene. They got that scene on like the third day. Like, really? And it was like shot. It was almost shot like under emergency conditions. So essentially, like, they didn't have the machines to create the kind of snow that they wanted. They just had to wait for the blizzard, and they checked out on the filming schedule that the most likely time that was going to happen was at the end of the shoot. And
Right.
3 days into the shoot, they got these weather conditions, and they had to like call up everybody, and they were like, "It's a go! We're going to get the big scene done and all that." And like, so it was all done like very, very choppy and all that stuff.
I
And
did not know that.
it's mad because it's the best scene in the film.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you may have just answered this one, but we usually end these podcasts. I ask my guest, what is your favourite bit of the film, since this is the Good Bit podcast? What is your favourite bit or best bit, favourite moment from Home Alone?
Okay, so that one's the most wholesome.
Yeah.
But the most notorious, the most well-known, it's got to be, everybody knows it. It's the whole black and white film.
Oh,
Christmas, you filthy animal. Like,
and a Happy New Year. Yeah.
Happy New Year. Like, that is so, I mean, both times, that's a hard one to pick. I don't know whether it's best with the pizza boy or whether it's best with the bandits, you know. And like Harry comes running back in, and he's like, "Oh my God, some guys just got, knocked
Someone
off.
just got blown away." Yeah.
Someone just got blown away." And he's like, "I don't know, but he seems pretty serious. Snakes. I've heard that name before.
I know that name.
Snakes. I don't know snakes.
I don't know those things. He's like, well, let's wait to see who it is. No, I love in Home Alone 2 when they revisit that, when it's the sequel and it's the concierge, and it's get down on your knees and tell me you love me. And it's Tim Curry.
You know what I found out of pure curiosity? I don't know if you know this, but when I was watching Home Alone I think last year, I just got this burning question, and I was like, is that a real film?
No, it's not. No.
It's not. They filmed it for Home Alone.
Yeah, like, the Angels with Dirty Souls or something. Yeah, it's not a real film.
But it's so believable.
Absolutely.
It's just excellent. It's so funny.
Such a great moment. Such a great moment. But I'd say my favourite is probably like the as I said, the scene in the church between him and Old Man Marley. I love the ending, and it's hard to pick like to say like the whole bit of them in the house is my favourite bit because there's so much of it. But like it is though, it's the bit that I would always go to and look forward to. I still laugh every single year. I look forward to moments in that kind of fight that they have. Yeah, it's one of my favourite movies of all time, one of the best movies ever made, and I'll watch it every year. Absolutely, at Christmas time.
I mean, I can totally understand why the Old Man Marley scene is probably your favourite. I mean, there's so much to unpack in that scene. It's got the real Christmas message of, understanding people, wholesomeness, even though they might have troubles and all that. It's just really sweet, the old man sitting with the young lad and looking out for them. And then once you've got all that wholesomeness dealt with, as you said, looks up at the clock, dung, dung, it's action time. Like, and the music completely changes it, and the camera starts working, and like, it's really smart how Christopher Columbus does that. Like how Chris Columbus does that. Because it's hard to get such a massive gear shift.
Absolutely, a bit of both.
In such a short amount of time and pull it off, but he does it. He does it.
Yeah. He comes in after running back from the church and he goes, "This is my house. I have to defend it." And it starts. Exactly. It's so good that he makes the macaroni and cheese. And he blows out the candles and stuff, and he goes, "This is it. Don't get scared now." So many quotable moments. That just I just think that makes or breaks a great film. Can you remember these individual lines, individual moments? And for Home Alone, you totally can.
What's any honourable mention scenes? Any other honourable mention scenes for you as well? Talking about favourite moments.
I like the bit in the shop where he's doing the shopping for the house.
Is that the toothbrush one?
He steals the toothbrush, yeah. Shoplifter, yeah.
I think one for me, as we mentioned before, is the funness.
Yeah.
I think that's such again, watching it as an adult, I don't think you notice the importance of the little funness story as a kid, because for me as a kid, there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of random mental stuff that would just freak you out as a kid. Like, totally understandable, but watching it as an adult, you're like, oh my God, I used to get like terrified of something that was like a funness.
Yeah, that would be scary, and then he overcomes that,
And he overcomes that before anything kicks off. That's a big motive in the film of the fact that he's grown up within that time. you know, as you said, he turns around to the furnace and he goes, "Shut up!" Like
Yeah.
that. It's yeah. It makes you it makes it quite interesting as a character, and I think it's essential for the comedy
Yeah.
of the film because see if you're worried about Kevin, if you were worried about Kevin in any way or form in this film, it wouldn't be funny. It would be quite a scary film. But that's almost like the symbol to the audience of going, "I've got this.
He's got that, yeah.
He's got it." You know, like nothing's going to scare him anymore. He's got his head in the zone. Like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I thought about casting as well. I mean, just again, can you imagine? And look what happened when they changed the casting in Home Alone 3 and 4 and what is it, Holiday Heist or something like that? Like, I'm sure they're good, but I'll not be able to watch them with a clear head because it's Home Alone. It's not, if they'd called it something like, I don't know, burglars into a wee boy's house.
I've got some that wee boy's house.
I'm sure it would have been good in a watchable film, but the fact that it's Home Alone 3. You know what I mean? I need Macaulay Culkin, Harry, and Marv. You know, and it's not them. So that's why I don't like the sequels. But yeah, honestly, one of my favorite movies of all time, and I can't wait to watch it this Christmas Eve. What are you going to be watching this Christmas time? You get any other favorite Christmas movies?
Oh, that's a toughie. Probably like some of the classics, like kind of Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Just your kind of Groundhog Day, like.
Well, these are all films that would maybe just come on at Christmas time, essentially on Christmas Day, whatever.
Yeah, not exactly Christmas themed movies, but around Christmas time, I just tend to watch all the feel good ones, all the happy ones. Like you kind of need that palate cleanser after Halloween because I go well into the horror films at Halloween. I'm a big fan of the horror films. So
I was going to say, yeah, Hereditary being your first choice of Psycho.
I think I wanted to pick Hereditary because I've never had an opportunity to discuss it like on a podcast, and I feel
well, we can still do it. You can come back on next time. We'll definitely do it.
That would be great, because I have got a lot to say about that film. I'm quite passionate about horror films. I've not seen them all in the way that some horror fans will be like, "Oh, well, have you seen this one? Have you seen this one?" But I think I've got a very good understanding of how it works and how you're supposed to scare an audience and the best way to do that. And there's
tricky though, right?
So
it must be tricky.
It is, but I think one of the hardest things that people have when trying to create fear is they overcomplicate it. I think Occam's razor needs to be applied to a lot of horror, which is where if you can simplify it, the more that you can simplify it, the better.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hereditary just it brought a lot of horror techniques to mainstream film in big cinemas that I hadn't seen before, and I was like, I hope that becomes a staple for the next generation of horror films, that you see over the next 10, 15 years. So that's why Hereditary was my number one pick.
No, absolutely, and that's absolutely fine. I would never. I'm only kidding on about being a psycho and stuff. If that was your pick, then that's it. But we'll definitely get you back on next time. I would love you to come back if you're up for it. We'll chat about Hereditary. I'll give me an excuse to watch it.
Of course, and yeah, I would love to come back, man. I've had such a lovely time. This is podcast numero 2, but you know, it's been great. It's been lovely chatting with you. You foster a very lovely, welcoming energy, as you always have, mate. You've always been such a lovely, approachable lad. So and that bleeds through into the podcast here.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm glad we got that on record. They're still recording. And what have you got coming up? What's you got anything coming up in the new year now that Molly and Mack is closed its doors for now?
Well, I'm doing Panto. In Blantyre.
Awesome.
Doing Jock and the Beanstalk. It's quite a small scale Panto. It's kind of like Play Pie in a Pint level.
Nice.
But if you're about, we've not got a lot of performances. If anybody's listening, then just look it up. It's Jock and the Beanstalk, Blantyre. It will be a great laugh. It's a great cast, and it's just a huge passion project. I'm very excited to be getting started on that. We don't start until next week.
Great.
And then don't start performing until the week after. As I said, it's a very short run, so if anybody's interested in seeing it, make sure you're pretty pronto on that.
Yep, absolutely.
And then acting wise, I'm in the audition stages of a couple of short films, couple of student films. A lot of the time in January, February, March, I give up a lot of my time to do short films and student films. I
Absolutely.
think my advice to any actors or want to be actors who are listening to this is that's one of your best ins. If you can get in and do short films and student films, right, you give yourself extra experience on camera, which is what a lot of training establishments aren't giving. Unfortunately, it is very theatre focused. You can give yourself credits because a lot of universities have a separate body for their student films. So, I think UWS is Screen Academy Scotland, so it's great for Spotlight. It's great for when you're doing showcase, and if you're talking to an agent and you can go, well, I've done X, Y, Z, and I've done blah, blah, blah. And
Totally.
because of short films as well, you can do them in the space. They usually get done within a week. So it's not too demanding on any course if you're studying at the time. But that's what I've got coming up there. I'm in the audition process for that. One of them, I'm excited to get both of them. One of them I'm really excited for.
But brilliant, Josh. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast and for the lovely words. You're welcome back anytime. And then maybe we can get a drink or something in actual person. Would be really nice at some point.
100%, man. 100%. Well, I know it's a little bit in the future, but for when Ryan's show starts going,
absolutely. There you go. It's a good shout.
Absolutely. And if anything you had before, then I'm more than willing to meet up.
Sounds great. Well, thank you everybody for listening and for watching this episode of the Good Bit Podcast. Really appreciate your time. Until next time, take care of yourselves and we'll catch you out down the road.
Citizens